Iran's strikes on Israel has drawn wider global condemnation for Iran, sparking fears of escalating conflict in West Asia. India has urged immediate de-escalation in the wake of rising tensions between Iran and Israel, citing threats to regional peace. Meanwhile, British Prime Minister has confirmed military action against Iranian drones as Israel reports high intercept rate, while global leaders unite in condemning Iran's aggression and they have at the same time intensified diplomatic efforts to diffuse these tensions.
Iran's retaliatory strikes on Israel has prompted swift condemnation from across the world. Reacting to rising tension in West Asia, India on Sunday stated that the hostilities between Israel and Iran threaten peace and security in the region. New Delhi has called for an immediate de-escalation, exercise of restraint, stepping back from violence. Iran's strike on Israel comes amid heightened tensions in the region and threatens to ignite further conflict with potentially far-reaching consequences. Iran launched more than 300 drones and missiles at Israel overnight, and Israel said 99% of them were shot down.
So far, we have intercepted and are continuing to intercept dozens of attack drones as well as cruise missiles and ballistic missiles outside of Israel's border. A number of Iranian missiles fell inside Israeli territory, causing minor damage to a military base with no casualties. Only one little girl has been hurt, and we hope she will be well.
British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on Sunday that his military jets shot down a number of drones launched by Iran in its attack on Israel.
I can confirm that our planes did shoot down a number of Iranian attack drones, and I want to pay tribute to the bravery and professionalism of our pilots flying into the face of danger to protect civilians.
Life returned to normalcy on Sunday in Tel Aviv, but the attack underscores the fragility of peace in the region.
I'm just glad that nobody got hurt and that we have a good defense system in Israel, but it shouldn't be like that at all. Like, we shouldn't be living in fear. We shouldn't be attacked like that.
Global leaders have swiftly condemned Iran's actions, emphasizing the need for restraint and diplomatic solutions to prevent further violence. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz warned Iran against further attacks on Israel. US President Joe Biden reiterated his support and commitment to Israel's security. In a post, he has shown unwavering commitment to Israel's security against threats from Iran and its proxies is ironclad. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres posted in X calling for an immediate cessation of these hostilities. He wrote, "I strongly condemn the serious escalation represented by large-scale attack launched on Israel by Iran." The EU top diplomat Josep Borrell in a post said the incident is a grave threat to regional security. Jordan called for de-escalation in the region and said it will lead to dangerous paths. The diplomatic efforts are underway to de-escalate tensions and prevent a further deterioration of the situation. International leaders have reiterated calls for restraint and dialogue, stressing the importance of finding peaceful solutions to the underlying conflicts fueling the violence in the region. Bureau Report, DD India.
And to understand the story further and its wider ramifications, we are joined by Nick Harper from Washington, D.C. to make us understand Biden administration's position on the Iran-Israel conflict. Nick, good evening and good morning to you out there in Washington, I believe. So, what exactly is now going forward United States of America's position on the conflict, especially when Biden administration talks about the ironclad support? At the same time, he doesn't want to be obviously part of the conflict, but is he saying that he's going to back Israel militarily if need be going ahead?
Good evening, Sakal. We are really, I guess, in a watching and waiting situation at the moment. The US waiting to see how Israel responds. And the messaging coming from Washington during the course of this morning is very much that it's up to Israel to decide, and whatever Israel decides, the US will back. However, we know privately that US President Joe Biden, in a late-night phone call with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, advised him not to retaliate, to try and de-escalate the situation rather than inflaming it further. Also pushing the Prime Minister with the message that the US does not intend to be involved in any retaliatory strikes against Iran itself. We've also heard from the White House in just the last few minutes saying that meeting, the G7 meeting, has wrapped up. This was a meeting that the US President said that he was aiming to convene. The message coming out of the back of this is that the leaders have condemned Iran's unprecedented attack against Israel, and the White House says that they have reaffirmed the G7's commitment to Israel's security. We are waiting further details, a potential readout from the White House to give more details on what was discussed and whether the 7 countries decided on any action. But what we do know is that action will be diplomatic. It will not be military in nature. And looking at ways to how they can potentially react to Iran over the coming days. But the US saying very much at this stage it does not intend to get involved in retaliatory strikes against Iran.
So, but it cannot be just pure posturing by US, Nick. If you could just help us understand, GS grouping combine condemnation of Iran and trying to diffuse the tension diplomatically. The question is that going to put any pressure on Iran, the diplomatic talk or diplomatic pressure from G7 on Iran?
Well, potentially not. Potentially not, Sakal. I mean, we've seen years of condemnation from the West against Iran, and there is a real question and sense of criticism here in the United States from the Republicans attacking the Democratic president, Joe Biden, saying that he has failed to prevent these attacks. One particular high-profile Republican, the former National Security Advisor under Donald Trump, John Bolton, saying that this was a failure of deterrence by the US President Joe Biden. Other top Republicans saying that, quite simply, the Biden administration has been weak in its diplomatic policy against Iran over recent years, and that is why we have seen this unprecedented attack by Iran itself. We will continue to see this criticism, but you're right. Will this new round of condemnation be enough to prevent Iran from carrying out perhaps similar attacks or another wave of attacks in the future?
Nick, it is always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us from DC. Thank you. And DD India correspondent Alex Kadir also reported a while back from Tel Aviv on the latest situation with regards to the Israel-Iran conflict.
Well, Israel now taking stock after what was an enormous barrage of drones and missiles targeting all across the country, and remarkably little damage caused, because we know that the vast majority of those drones and missiles were intercepted by a coalition of countries, including the Israeli Air Force and Israeli air defenses, of course, but the United States Air Force, the British Royal Air Force, and perhaps surprisingly, the Jordanian Royal Air Force also involved in stopping those Iranian weapons from reaching Israeli territory. Now, we know that out of 185 drones, 36 cruise missiles and 110 ballistic missiles, only 3 of those powerful ballistic missiles made it through or I should say 7 made it through to Israeli territory, hitting the airbase, the military airbase that launched those strikes against Iranian generals in Damascus just 2 weeks ago. So certainly that would have been a targeted strike. The concern now, of course, is one of escalation. There is fear that Israel will retaliate against Iran directly in a way that Iran has warned would generate an even more severe strike from Iranian forces. So clearly, the concern, not just in the region, not just in Israel, but around the world, is that you could have an escalation between 2 nuclear-capable countries. We've heard an urging for de-escalation from the Ministry of External Affairs in India, from the White House in Washington, D.C., saying that the US would not support a retaliation directly against Iran. We've had mixed messages from the War Cabinet, which concluded a meeting not long ago. Benny Gantz, the very prominent and former political rival of Prime Minister Netanyahu, saying Israel will respond, quote, at a time that suits us, but the Culture and Sports Minister Miki Zohar saying that would be a weak response. So clearly tensions within the Israeli war cabinet trying to figure out what that response will be. All eyes of the world on this region, fearing that regional escalation. Alex Cadier in Tel Aviv, reporting for DD India.